Greetings, everyone. My name is Jerice Lee, and I'm a Master of Public Health student in the Health Informatics GPA 733 course at the University of New England. And I'm happy to share with you a topic that is very, very dear to me, and I wholeheartedly believe in it. It's the topic of breastfeeding and how it takes a village to basically produce and increase strategies for breastfeeding among African American women. And so, one of the quotes from an influential person. Her name is Dr. Ruth Peterson. She's the director of the Division of Nutrition, Physical Activity, and Obesity at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And she really sums up why breastfeeding is the best. In one of her quotes, she says, "Breastfeeding provides unmatched health benefits for babies and mothers. It is the clinical gold standard for infant feeding and nutrition, with breast milk uniquely tailored to meet the health needs of a growing baby. We must do more to create supportive and safe environments for mothers who choose to breastfeed." So let's talk about this great activity. What are the wealth of benefits? Well, dually, breastfeeding is great for both the mother and baby. Number one, for the mother, which most women would be very appreciative of. I know I am. But it delays the return of the menstrual period. Sometimes women do not get their menstruation up until a year after, or whenever they finish breastfeeding their child. It may come back like within 6 months, even up to a year, and you do not have menstruations while breastfeeding most women do not have menstruations while breastfeeding their babies during that duration of time. It's also a major cost saver. Who wouldn't want to save $1,700? The average cost for formula, and it may be even more. We're looking at in some research that $1,700 a year cost saving by breastfeeding, because it's free versus formula is not. Also increases the bond between the mother and the baby. It gives them a spending time to be together and just have a close connection. And greatly, it reduces the risk of heart disease, ovarian, and breast cancer. Those are prevalent diseases among women. For the baby, it lowers the risk of asthma, obesity, type 2 diabetes, ear and respiratory infections, which are very, very popular for babies, very popular. And then also sudden infant death syndrome, which is better known as SIDS. So, with all of these wealth of benefits, we did begin to see an increase in breastfeeding rates in the United States. In 2002, breastfeeding was at a 71.4% increase, and then we also saw it steadily go up about 82.5% at the end by 2014. And this information was extracted from the Center of Disease Control, and I actually accessed this by looking at data sets in the National Immunization Survey. This is one of our assignments in our course, was to go through and find data sets that were related to our topic. So I had the opportunity to go through the National Immunization Survey and the data sets that were presented, and able to go through and see how many women were breastfeeding and by race, and then also the duration of months that were broken up between 3, 6, and 1 year. So here's where we see a disparity of breastfeeding by race. We see that Hispanic women were at an 80% for breastfeeding. White women are at 75.2, and Black women, there is a major gap. They are at 58.9. So that tells us right there that there must be more strategies geared toward influencing Black women, or providing the opportunity for Black women to breastfeed. So why do these disparities exist? Well, in some research that I reviewed from the National Institute of Minority Health, an article on breastfeeding disparities in African American women, there seems to be a lack of education. Black women are not educated, or prevented education on breastfeeding, so that they can have the option to choose, oh, okay, let me see if I would rather breastfeed my child versus formula. They're not given that education piece to make that choice. Also, shorter maternity leave. Black women have been known to go back to work and have a shorter maternity leave after having their child. Also, there isn't enough designated space to pump breast milk. If they wanted to pump, there's not a lot of space that is designated to be able to pump and store milk for the child. Also, media imagery is major, major, major. We do not see a lot of Black images of Black women, or pictures or advertisements of Black women feeding, breastfeeding their children. It was actually hard for me to even look through some of the imageries to try to find some images of Black women. I saw a couple, but it wasn't as many as I saw as far as white women breastfeeding their child, or lighter skinned women feeding their child. And also embarrassment. It's not always looked upon by society as being acceptable. And so a lot of women tend to be embarrassed about breastfeeding their child. And so those are some stigmas that we definitely need to reduce. So how can we close this major gap that we have between the races, specifically between Black women, and increase Black women breastfeeding? Well, it takes a village, and I took this quote, and a lot of African Americans are familiar with this quote. We often say it takes a village to raise the children. It's an old African proverb, and so I looked at a lot of the partnerships and community that would need to interact together in order to increase breastfeeding. And I did that, and I placed it into an influence map. And this is what I really want to dive into. As you'll see with my influence map, um, of course, we have the mother in the middle, and we have several influences and persuasions and entities that actually impact the mother and influence her and persuade her to be able to actually accept breastfeeding as an option. So I know that family is a great influence, and that's almost no matter what race, your family is going to be a great influence to things, and also the community and your friends. And so I took the advice of my professor, and I kind of increased my influence map to add more description to it. So you'll see I have the family, I have the father, grandparents, sisters, and brothers playing a role into the mother, and they're more of an encouragement system and a support system that will influence the mother to breastfeed and impact her to breastfeed. Also the community and friends and neighbors, and business owners too. That's a great influence and support. And I added to the friends part, the community part, peer pressure, because oftentimes a lot of times people can be pressured into doing things or not doing things. So I added that to my list. Also to my left, you'll see I have healthcare facilities, education, and healthcare providers. And I have them both intertwining into each other and then feeding back into the mother. For the healthcare facilities, I feel as though it needs to be more atmosphere friendly for breastfeeding, and more welcoming, and decreasing the amount of advertisers that are able to come in and promote formula. I think there needs to be a policy in healthcare facilities, or that promote and make the atmosphere more friendlier for breastfeeding. Also, as we talked about before, and also, as we talked about, for education, being able to provide that mother that education for breastfeeding is very important. Healthcare providers participating in that educational moment as well, increasing the support of lactation specialists, and not only increasing that, but also diversifying the providers, making sure that the women are linked to people who look like them, who can understand their culture as well, and offering breastfeeding again as that option. On my other side, my right side, you'll see I have images, and we spoke about that previously, about having more images of Black women breastfeeding, and that's a visual influence. Also, advertisements and media billboards and things of that sort in the community, making sure they're able to see that, and that's another part of influence of imagery. Also, environments, creating comfortable places in public spaces for mothers to be able to provide to pump breast milk. I think that's important as an influence by adding ease and comfortability for the mother. And of course, policies, mandating that we have policies that mandate the right to have, or to have spaces in places other than work, in public places, for mothers to be able to breastfeed. or pump breast milk, and then making sure another policy extending maternity leave, making it a law for mothers. So offering it as a law, and so by making these different policies, it makes it important. It makes it significant, so that Black women and people can see that hey, breastfeeding is important. So. Yeah. So what happens if we can make this influence map work? It decreases for the stakeholders. It'll decrease absentees among the mothers and absentees among the babies from being in school. So that way workflow will continue. The mother won't have to take off for work to watch her child because, as stated before, it decreases a lot of chronic illnesses. It decreases asthma, things of that sort. And on the mother end, it decreases other things such as cancer. It helps her to lose weight, things of that sort. So it really helps out for stakeholders or employers. It also increases just overall healthy African American babies. It also decreases the amount of money that we would have to put into WIC services for formula. It also increases family bond and community bond. Now everybody's working together to begin to normalize breastfeeding. How can we spread the word? Well, I created an infographic map or infographic that should be placed, I think, in places, in certain places like hospital facilities, community centers, grocery stores, radio announcements, billboards, school flyers, WIC offices, and it's really easy to read. You see here it has an visually African American mother. She's breastfeeding her baby. It lists the different gaps. It also lists why breastfeeding is important, and it also lists the things that we need to do to change breastfeeding, the different barriers that need to be decreased. So I think breastfeeding is just a phenomenal activity for women. Overall, it produces healthy babies, it produces healthy mothers. And if we can increase the rate of Black women breastfeeding their children overall, you'll have a healthier Black family or African American family. And so I wholeheartedly believe in breastfeeding. I actually breastfed my son up until a year. And so I think that breastfeeding is very important. And I think that if we follow these steps, we can definitely increase breastfeeding among Black women. Give them the option give them the option of breastfeeding, educate, show the difference, give them the wealth of the wealth of benefits, explain it more, but allow it to be an option for Black women, and also put the information where African American women are. Make sure they're in the centers where African Americans women go to, mostly grocery stores. A lot of times school flyers actually help have educational classes and courses. That's very important. So I wholeheartedly believe in breastfeeding. I fed my son and I saw the wealth of benefits, and I think that these different strategies will definitely increase breastfeeding among Black women. And for more information, my name is Jerice Lee, and if you have any questions, I am available, and you can email me at JericeKlee@gmail.com. That's JareeSeklee@gmail.com. I thoroughly, as I said before, I really enjoy this topic. It was a great research project to me. I hope you've learned a lot of wealth of information, and if I can help or give you any more information, please feel free to contact me. Thank you and have a great day.